The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of the original Ghostbusters. That's right, the original 1984. We're going to discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings, well, I mean, as much as there is in the Ghostbusters. And joining me today on the panel are Mike Creavey. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Dom. Good to see you.
You too. And Mike Denz. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. As before, I'm going to try to remember to use your whole names so that everyone knows who's talking to who here in this craziness. I've previously said before we started that Father Mike Gossett is not allowed to be on a panel with you guys because then it would just be a mess. It would be the Mike and Mike show.
Fair enough.
So we're off to a great start here on this crazy podcast. And so I want to suggest to everyone, please make sure that you've subscribed in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications, because if you don't do it, there'll be cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. All right. I'm already quoting the movie.
This is going to be fun.
All right. So 1984, that's when this movie came out. The Ghostbusters, starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd. Oh, the third one, I forget.
Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis. Oh my gosh, I was going to type them all down. I'm like, hey, I remember all who is in this movie. Apparently not. IMDb is coming up now, so I can make sure I don't forget.
Because I already have it up.
This movie has quite the cast, not just the main cast, but the supporting cast. We got Sigourney Weaver, we got Rick Moranis, we've got even just William Atherton as Walter Peck.
Yes.
Yeah, the 1980s jerk who made millions being a jerk.
Yes.
Die Hard and this movie.
Yep.
That's right.
When you read about what he went through, people calling him names that I won't mention on the show, and and I think he might have been physically assaulted too.
Yeah, he said he had 12-year-old kids attacking him in the street. Yeah. It was just it was terrible. But let's some of the other people who show up in this. We have Annie Potts as Janine Melnitz, their secretary. Ernie Hudson, of course, is in it. Yeah. And then other people who would go on to recognizable careers. In Hollywood as character actors, we'd have who was it? Dana Barrett's the violinist of the orchestra. We only see him in one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had to look him up. Yeah.
Timothy Carhart. Yeah. I mean, so many people. And then, of course, there's the cameos. You got Larry King. You got Casey Kasem. You got Casey Kasem's wife.
Yes.
She was the tall blonde woman at the party.
I'm going home.
Yeah. Lewis. Her feature film debut. She was never in a movie before.
And she used to be Carla's ex-husband Nick's wife, second wife on Cheers.
Cheers, that's right.
And you can also watch a 48 Hours about her and the death of Casey Kasem and the arguing between her and the kids. And
oh my gosh,
it's fascinating. But that's a whole nother podcast.
Yes, way to bring it down there, Mike. But no, just kidding. Well, speaking of Die Hard, by the way, with William Atherton, another Die Hard alum is in this movie, Reginald VelJohnson, who plays the cop.
Yes,
and he was also with the in that movie with the annoying kid Urkel.
He's always a cop.
Does he? Yeah, I was going to say, because he was Al Powell in Die Hard. He was the Carl Winslow in Family Matters.
That's right.
He only plays police officer.
He's only good for him. It's you got to roll.
Hire me, I'll bring my own costume.
Yes. Exactly. So what a cast. And then of course the people who are said to have been auditioned or roles for them. The Ernie Hudson's role as Winston was originally supposed to be Eddie Murphy,
right?
Which would have been very interesting. But Eddie Murphy chose to do, I forget, some other probably bad movie. No, actually, this was about the time of Beverly Hills Cop, so it's probably Beverly Hills Cop. He hadn't started doing the really bad movies at this point yet.
He was churning them out in the early 80s.
Right. So what a cast. Originally written by Dan Aykroyd. He wrote the original script. it was deemed not really workable. I think it was like took place in the future where there was police department, fire department, and like a ghost department. And it was kind of weird. Dan Aykroyd sometimes has some weird ideas. So Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman came in. Ivan Reitman directed, and they rewrote it together. They went to Martha's Vineyard for 3 weeks and rewrote it and came up with this script, which is great. A script which, by the way, Bill Murray then threw out all his lines and pretty much ad-libbed everything.
Yeah, I kind of think that they would just have like, okay, Bill talks about flirting with Dana for 20 minutes. Go.
Yeah, yeah, sorry. And they just keep the best part. I mean,
why bother writing in lines?
Yeah,
and it's funny. I was just thinking, Dom was checking this because I was pretty sure, the age of a lot of these guys. Like Harold Ramis was a little older, so he was pushing 40 when they made it. But most of the other guys were early 30s or so, or about my age. I'm 36 now, so they're a little younger than me. But then two things that are funny about this. First of all, Eddie Murphy was only like 22. At that time, and he's just this megastar and was already that famous being so young. And then, just thinking about this. So I was born in 1984, and so my connection to this is always, it's just like the world I was born into. I asked my mom before we came on, I said, tell me there's a funny story about the first time I saw it. I said, because I know I grew up with it, and and for those who, I don't know if anyone's going to see this or not, I thought you guys would appreciate this. I actually have these on my shelf behind me.
You have a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man figure.
We've got, now this is the Venkman from the cartoon show, but this I just didn't even notice this till now. I don't know if you can see on the foot there. So this is actually 1984 Columbia Pictures on this thing.
Wow.
And I was dying, so I was like, I got to get that out. But she did say that my parents were in the army when I was born in Germany. And so it came out in June 1984. And I said, so what was going on? She said, we saw it on post and I just held you and you fell asleep. So apparently me and Ghostbusters go all the way back.
Wow.
That's just a fun origin for me.
Well, one of the things I read about this movie was they were a little surprised at how many kids saw it because it was a little scary. Like some of the things were a little intense. There's some off-color humor in this. There's some adult humor in this, which I tend to forget that because I was in high school at the time this came out because I'm older than you, and I tend to forget back in the 80s, movies could get a little bit suggestive, which is kind of interesting. That like today we think movies are so horrible, but they could still be a little. The 80s movies especially were kind of
because this was pre PG-13 existence, right? With the whole Temple of Doom thing. I seem to remember, or was it Red
right
Dawn?
Right around there. Yeah.
Well, this was rated PG, and I don't think it would have gotten away with that. If it was PG-13.
Yeah, definitely. It was. I mean, there's a couple of things, frankly, mostly sexual jokes in it that really kind of like what was it? Ray's dream sequence, which was totally out of left field and like this. Well, so there's let's tell the story now, I suppose, since we're talking about it. They filmed a whole bunch more stuff, as they always do. And there was this whole scene where Ray and Egon went to this old fortress and to ghost hunting, this colonial fort or something like that. And Ray is wearing this general's coat that he found somewhere. And then they go to sleep and he wakes up to the ghost floating over him. So they turned that into a dream that he had because apparently they thought it was so funny. It was, even though it's wicked juvenile. But so they kept it in the movie, but it's not really appropriate for kids. Really,
well, even
for
in the beginning,
kids.
like with Peter doing his ridiculous, and I love the scene, like his ridiculous study. And it's funny because my wife, my wife has her PhD from Penn State. And so I just kind of being within that world to some degree as she was getting her PhD and just, seeing how studies work and grants and stuff. And it was so funny just to see this where like his study is just so stupid. And then he's clearly hitting on this student. And I'm just like, man, you could not make that today.
Right. Well, let's talk about so
not to mention you would never have the bad guy be from the EPA. That would be you'd be filleted in today's climate. He would have to be
He's the hero
of the film.
Yep. He's the hero. Actually, we'll get. Actually, I want to get into the movie itself, but a couple other things I want to say before it. I want to talk a little about the music. This is a movie that had a lot of a soundtrack of pop songs. There's a lot of pop songs in it. that we recognize. But the theme song is the most recognizable by Ray Parker Jr. And apparently, not just apparently, they were sued by Huey Lewis. They had approached Huey Lewis to do the theme song, but he'd already done Back to the Future and didn't want to get typecast, you know what I mean? But he didn't want to get pigeonholed as the movie song guy, and so he didn't want to do it. So Ray Parker came in, and he said that Ray Parker made the song. It sounded too much like I Want a New Drug.
Right.
I don't know.
I think the more I listen, if I compare them or listen to them back to back, it's like, yeah,
there's a little similarity. Yeah. I'd say inspired by, maybe, there's only so many ways you could do.
Right.
Although Ray Parker said he came up with the idea for Who You Gonna Call. He was watching like late night, saw an infomercial, reminded him of the commercial from the movie, and threw that into Who You Gonna Call, Ghostbusters. Like this, that whole line, and just it all grew out of that. I mean, the song itself was a phenomenon. It was huge.
Oh yeah.
I remember loving it before I ever saw the film.
Yep. And the music video, because of course this was the era of MTV, which was a music video channel back in the 80s, whatever it is now. But back then it was a music video channel. And it was a star-studded music video. I mean, it had everybody in it. People that weren't even in the movie. Chevy Chase was in it. It was just wild. So there's the theme song. And then I do want to mention, just as an overall, we mentioned how Bill Murray ad-libbed everything. This is one of the most quotable movies. Like, there are so many lines that people still say today. Like, I still say, well, you don't see that every day. That one, which is a great line. It is all purpose. And this chick is toast.
Well, even sometimes when I pull something off that was just difficult or even like some menial task, whatever. Yeah. And I know Bill Murray didn't make it up per se. I mean, it's referencing drinking Miller beer, who doesn't pay for this podcast, by the way, or anything. I'm just throwing this in there, but I'll still sometimes just high five someone and be like, it's Miller time.
It's Miller time. That's right.
But like, that's why I'm quoting it, and they know that it's so like, it's just a riot.
Okay. My girlfriend is a dog. I mean, just there's lines all over the place. I tried to think of the most innocent thing possible, just the whole movie.
I even love at the beginning when they're like just distraught and they're like, like swigging whatever they're drinking, like at Columbia.
Peach brandy, I think it is. Something gross. Yeah.
I love how Dan Aykroyd delivers that line about like, like all the great stuff the university gave them. They didn't have to produce anything. And he's like, you've never worked in the private sector. He's like, they expect results.
They expect results. Oh my gosh. Such great lines. And I mean, this is a hallmark of Bill Murray movies, isn't it? Like between this and Caddyshack, and as we talked about recently, we talked about Groundhog Day. They just all, for some reason, his movies all just have these memorable lines that you want to repeat with your buddies over and over again. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, and the chemistry with them, because him and Harold Ramis from Stripes, and Dan Aykroyd from SNL, and just they. Oh, and then, Rick Moranis from SCTV, like you had that overlap with SCTV and SNL, and it just was great.
Yeah, there was such great chemistry among these guys. It works out so well through this. I mean, that's one of the things that makes this movie such a classic. So as we go, we should probably talk a little bit about the serious topic of what the church teaches about ghosts and hauntings, and for an in-depth treatment of this, actually. I would recommend Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, another podcast on this network, at sqpn.com/mysterious, episode number 1, where Jimmy and I talked about ghosts and what it means. And the fact is the church doesn't have one particular thing to say about ghosts, but it also, as some people kind of assume that any ghostly activity must immediately be demonic, but that's not necessarily true either. In fact, there are ghosts in the Bible. There's what was it when Saul consults the Witch of Endor, not the Wicket, with the tiny.
I always think of the Ewoks present.
Yeah, not Ewoks. Endor is an actual place in the Bible, but he consults the Witch of Endor, and they do some necromancy, and they talk to to ghosts. So, it's not as so. What does the church teach? Well, the church doesn't have a definitive statement, but there's things to say about it. I don't want to get too there'll be a huge tangent to talk about it, but we could bring it up as we go along if it's relevant. But I definitely want to recommend that you check out if you want to learn more, to check out that episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, episode number 1, first thing we talked about.
I did appreciate when they did bring up the Bible in their little car ride.
Yes.
When Ray and
Winston.
Winston were talking, and Winston was like really trying to, like, you ever read the Bible and this, and they misquoted it, the
Revelation
chapter,
7.
Revelation, yeah, and of course Ray, goes into his scientific. Well, many religions have a myth about this, and he goes, and he kind of scolds him,
right?
Like, well, I'm not talking about myth. I mean, did you ever think that this might be happening because we're at the end time? So he kind of he brought a little bit of what when people rise from the dead, what that will mean. There was a little bit of that in there.
I found it very interesting, since we're talking about it, that as Ray pretty much believes anything of having to do with the paranormal. He'll believe in ghosts. Every crazy thing that comes up, he believes it. But when it comes to God, faith, religion, he's clearly skeptical, and that I find that kind of ironic, given that what is the famous is it Chesterton or Bullock who says an educated man isn't one who believes in nothing. It's one who don't
believe anything or something like that. Or
an open mind isn't someone who will. Oh, I gotta find the quote, but it's about it's not that you don't believe in nothing. It's you believe in anything. The foolish man, and it's sort of the thing is like, you've closed your mind to this possibility, but you're open to every other one. And why? So why are you close to this? Because you have a bias against it, perhaps.
Well, and I don't pretend to know the state of Dan Aykroyd's soul or anything like that. That's not my business. But it was interesting that they went into. I'm sure you guys have probably seen, or most of our listeners listening to this have probably at least or might be aware of that awesome Netflix 1 hour episode on that Movies That Made Us series that they did that went into a lot of the background with this, and they were talking in there about how I never knew this. I knew some of the stuff you guys mentioned earlier about his, first draft and his interest in the paranormal. I know doesn't have that crystal skull like vodka that he makes, I think too. It's like something that he's into that. So, but I didn't realize, I guess his whole family, like generations back to like the late 19th century, like big occultists, and like his grandfather had seances in the barn, and like and his dad wrote some book about the paranormal. So this is like this, he sees it as like this family legacy thing, which of course that kind of stuff, we would, the church would have a lot to say about, meddling and occultism and all that. But I find it just incredible that like, none of them, or himself included growing up, ever would have imagined that, now what he says, looking back on it, it's like it kind of, all of that culminated in this movie in a way, which had its own, kind of standalone cultural impact.
Right.
Which is kind of just interesting, that you don't have to, be drawn into the dark stuff or anything like that to just really enjoy this, just as it is, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not an occult movie that you draw into the occult.
I found the quote, it's a Chesterton quote.
Oh. Okay.
When a man stops believing in God, he doesn't believe in nothing. He believes anything.
That's right. That's it. Thank you. I'm no Chesterton. Let's just, So let's talk about the movie, about what happens in the movie itself. We start at the New York Public Library, where a librarian is, she encounters something. We don't see what it is at first. And they do this not showing us this, like these weird things that happen, books that she's in the stacks, like in the basement. So let me tell you, when I was in high school, I worked in the town public library, and it was not the New York Public Library. It was a small suburban library. And even that had areas that were dark and quiet and deserted and wicked creepy. So I can imagine that the New York Public Library has even more of those. So I could sympathize. In fact, I probably saw this movie while I still had that job, which means I probably stopped going to those parts of the library to put books away. I don't know if those books ever got found again. So anyway, as she has the thing where the card catalog, that's, I don't know if you kids remember that, but the card catalog slides out and the cards start flying out of the thing, out of the catalog into the air, which was a great effect. I was trying to figure out how they did that, and I read that what they did was, so they're basically index cards, and they had a copper pipe with perforations in it.
Right.
Down inside it. And so they slid the drawer out, and then they blew air into it, and so it progressively blew the cards, like the last card, into the air. So it was almost like shooting a deck of cards in the air.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
A fun practical effect.
Yes,
I think they used wires for the books, but then they kind of, you couldn't see them or whatever. Just they said those are some old effects, but they're really they hold up.
The classics. I mean, now they would just CG it all, and you could I don't know, you might be so good that you wouldn't be able to tell. But I just like the idea that this is before you could CG it and it looked good, because frankly the CG later on is not going to look good, but that's okay. Right. It's an old movie. Then we have the poor librarian is scared. Then we switch to the Center for Paranormal Studies at unnamed university, which is Columbia University. Frankly, that's where they filmed it all. Columbia allowed them to film it there on the condition that they not use the name or show the name anywhere.
Interestingly enough, it's not actually a connection, but funny enough, Columbia Pictures. So
yeah. Well, maybe
there is some name mention in there in a way.
So Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, he's doing this study, which is reminiscent of an actual study where these cards. It's got a matchup of two studies. There's one study where they held up a card, and the person is trying to, only the researcher can see what's on the back of it, and the subject tries to guess what it is, and it's like trying to figure out if it's telepathic. It's usually one person, not two, but the zapping them for getting it wrong is based on an entirely different study where they tried to see how they would put a student and a subject, and the subject was actually in on it, but the student wasn't. And so, but the person who was in on it, the subject, would pretend to be zapped by progressively more powerful electric zaps because the student was following orders of an authority to zap it. And even though the person was, oh, no, stop, the authority figure would, no, just keep going. It's all right. Just keep going. And it was a study to see how much people would obey an authority figure in the face of mounting evidence that they're doing harm. I don't think that would be allowed today. That's probably unethical. But anyway, so in this case, Venkman's on the make for the pretty girl and abusing completely unethical behavior, and obviously doesn't care about his research. And so the kid who's zapping, even when he gets it right, he zaps him, and the girl gets everything wrong, and that's all. He only has eyes for her. So it's just a funny scene, which really sets up the character as sort of this guy who he has a degree in psychology and parapsychology, but doesn't really care. He's just he obviously got his degrees because he didn't want to leave school and get a job. So he's just doing what he can to keep going, even though he doesn't really care or believe in anything. And that really sets the character up there. But we have the other two, Ray and Egon. They're obviously very serious about their research into the paranormal. And it's interesting, if you guys think about it, are these guys the prototypes for all modern ghost hunters, like ghost hunter reality shows?
I think it seems like it. Or I mean, there oftentimes seems to be some reference to it, made along the way.
I don't know that they ever had any ghost hunter. I mean, those are more recent, right? You never had anything, because they seem to be spoofing exactly what we see in those shows. When I've seen bits and pieces of them, I mean, they're sitting there and they got a flashlight in their face or something, and they got some sort of equipment that does, I don't know what, records things or whatever. Yes. And like they'll hear like a creaky noise or whatever, and they're like, okay, what's that? And get all excited. Yeah. And that's exactly what Ray and Egon are doing. I mean, then of course they actually see slime and stuff, and it just whoa, collect some of that for me,
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think before this, like ghost hunters were like psychics. They'd walk in a room and like, I feel this and that and the other thing. But like the scientific, technical engineering types with weird equipment that like repurposed stuff that is like, for sniffing out propane links that they've repurposed as ectoplasm sniffers and stuff like that. That I think starts with Ghostbusters. I'd like to, someone to prove me wrong if there was something before that, but I think it starts with Ghostbusters. Anyway, they go to they get called to the public library. There's a haunting. As they're coming in, like Ray said, I like this line from Ray. He says to Peter, he says, "You forget I was witness to an undersea unexplained mass sponge migration." Like, that's evidence of the paranormal.
He's like, the sponge has migrated 1.5 feet.
You weren't there. You didn't see it.
Was this when he said, this is like when you tried to drill a hole in your head?
Yes.
He goes, that would have worked if you didn't stop me.
Another ad-lib line, by the way, by Harold Ramis.
It was an ad-lib line by Harold Ramis.
So Harold Ramis made a decision with this character to never smile at all during the movie. He never smiles.
How hard must that have been?
Oh my gosh, it's so great. So they're interviewing this elderly librarian, and he asks her if there's a history of mental incompetence in her family. She says her uncle thought he was Saint Jerome, who, by the way, is a patron saint of librarians. So that comes up.
Oh, God, it just Bill Murray's like, I'd call that a big yes.
Yes.
Like first question.
And then,
oh my gosh.
Well, that's another part of this movie that I like is this Ray and Egon are constantly making reference to these obscure events, like the 1947 mass turbulence in Philadelphia, like all of these paranormal events that for them are real big deal stuff. And I wonder how many of these things are real. Like he mentions Tunguska later. That's a real thing. That, you know, and that's another episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. But I should have had Jimmy join us, because that would have been fun. He could have told us which ones are real or not. But as they go through it, it kind of lends this air of a subject that is real, that you don't know. You know, it gives this depth and authenticity to it. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was reading, like I can tell that you have too, some of the stuff on IMDb, and there was one person who, like, in Goofs, corrected the date for that, whatever it was that you mentioned. Really? And I'm like, who cares? I figured you were making all of it up. I mean, I didn't think any of it was true. They just like, some sort of thing that happened in 1842, you know.
Right.
Well, I think I looked years ago that, like, Tobin's Spirit Guide, or like, I think some of those things are real, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
that sounds familiar. But yeah, I mean, it was just kind of funny that they actually used some real things.
That's funny.
And when they were doing that.
So through the course of their progress through the basement of the library, Peter Venkman slowly starts to become worried, and then he becomes a believer. Like, he sees the stuff. You know, I mean, there's the symmetrical book stacking, which is like, no human would ever do that. But which was a whole funny thing. But the ectoplasm that Egon asks him to collect, and he gets it all over himself, which is another funny thing. But then they see stuff happening, like the bookcase falling is the first thing, and then they see the ghost. They see the ghost, and then it's like he tries to talk to her, and she says shush, and then so Ray's big brainstorm is, get her. And then we get that scary reveal. Like, again, when I was a kid, I was a teenager, so I pretended not to be scared, but I jumped in my seat, I think, when I saw that first time.
That whole beginning, especially with the librarian, was, you know, with the music and just following her around. The only reason when I was rewatching it, like, I know that lady is a character actor in comedy movies, so it ruins the scariness a little bit, but she's kind of creepy looking in a way. So as she's going through those stacks and things start moving around and she doesn't see it, and then the cars start flipping out, and that's kind of scary. You know, the beginning, up until they start playing the Ghostbusters theme, you're like, I don't know if I like this movie. I thought it was going to be funny, and it's scaring me.
Well, it was with, I'm trying to think, I wrote her name down, Alice Drummond.
Yes,
because I recognized her from after this Funny Farm with Chevy Chase, which is a hilarious movie. And then she's the antique store, you know, lady, and then she was Ray Finkel's mom in Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah, I knew I recognized her.
It's like she pops up. There's just this, like, you know, matronly kind of like old lady, like mild mannered, you know, and like, hey, let's terrify her with a ghost, you know. But my favorite thing from that whole scene is always like, you know, what do we do? And like the whole thing, like all the science and everything. And then like, just look at Peter, like the one who's been the least interested in this. And now the two guys who have been all like driving everything are both like, well, we never really thought this far through.
We never thought that we'd actually get this far.
And he's like talking to me, asking, okay, what are we going to do? And then, like, you know, Egon instantly starts going for the calculator. And every time I see it, he just knocks it as hard as he can out of his hand. Like, stop that. I do not know how Harold Ramis kept it together for that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he knocks that thing out of his hand. It's great.
So so that ends badly for them. But when they get back to the university, they're on a breakthrough. They've discovered real ghosts. They're on the verge of capturing ghosts, and the university is shutting them down, throwing them out, and now they have to earn a living. And so they come up with this idea of, starting a ghost busting business because Ray and Egon have developed a ghost trap system. And so they have to start the business, and it's very expensive. So they end up mortgaging Ray's family home at 19% interest.
Like everybody has 3 mortgages these days.
I mean, 19, like it's what, 3.5 right now?
The first 5 years are going to like $20,000 or something.
Yeah. So they end up getting the firehouse, the old abandoned firehouse, which they're trying to haggle with the real estate agent until Ray ruins it by, sliding down the fire pole. We have to have this. Let's sleep here tonight, which is great. And then
and Dom, can I just one real story real quick if I could throw it with the firehouse, because like when I was a kid, and this came to video and everything, so like I was 5 or 6, and I had seen it and actually remembered at that time. But my dad used to have to go occasionally to New York to do some banking stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I was only like 5 maybe. I was real small, and I remember him like waking me up, and it's like really early and I don't know what's going on. And he like puts me in the truck, and my uncle worked with him, so they loaded up together, and I'm just like, what's going on? I fell asleep. And all of a sudden he's jostling me to wake up, and I like look, and I'm bleary eyed, and I look out the front of the car, and I see the World Trade Center.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like blown away because I can't believe he has the picture of it at the time.
Yeah.
And so like, they took me with them that day. We went and saw the 8th Hook and Ladder, like the fire hall, and the firefighters there let me like slide down the pole and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And, so it was just a really fun, for a kid who loved Ghostbusters, that was like this magical trip, being able to actually go to New York for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So it's at this point where we get introduced to Dana, Sigourney Weaver's character. She lives in creepy gargoyle building on Central Park West, which the 666 Central Park West, I think it is. Or something. Actually, I don't think that's the address, but it would be funny. It's actually a beautiful Art Deco building inside. I mean, I was kind of impressed. Like, what? This is actually a really nice.
What Egon says when we get there. Oh, Art Deco, nice.
I know, it's kind of funny. I thought that to myself at the beginning of the movie. Then he says it later. And then she's got her neighbor Louis Tully, creepily played by Rick Moranis. He's totally like into her, and he's got that weird like what's that like mousy kind of voice he does. I mean, it's just so great.
It's just so him.
It's so it's unique.
I wouldn't even attempt to try to do it.
I know. So I'm having a party.
He ends up being the keymaster, and he gets locked out of his apartment 3 different times.
Yes. That's the great irony, is he's the keymaster and he keeps locking himself out of his apartment. I mean, it's just perfect. So Dana is a cellist who lives in a penthouse corner apartment on Central Park West. I don't know if she's independently wealthy or she's one of the friends from NBC's Friends or something, because people in New York apparently live in these vast places that nobody can afford. So as she comes home, she sees a Ghostbusters ad on TV. All right. Deep dive here. Apparently, and I don't know how true this is, the phone number for the Ghostbusters is 555-2368. It is the sum of 888 and 1480, which supposedly in Greek numerology denotes Jesus Christ.
Oh.
I don't know.
Heard that. That's right.
Yeah. I came across this nugget on the internet as I was doing my research, and I'm like, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna lay that out there anyway.
That's interesting.
And another thing, when they were, I don't know if it was for the re-release or just as the summer went on.
Yeah.
They put the number out there as a real number in their ads, and it was a recording of Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray being like, "We're out catching ghosts, but and see the movie or something." And it got thousands of calls. Right.
24/7, like thousands of calls. Yeah. It was an 800 number that they put on the TV ad. Yeah.
Right.
It's so funny. So Dana, she was bringing the groceries home. She's taking the groceries out of her bag in the kitchen. She's got Stay Puft marshmallows. I don't know if you caught that. And her eggs, the eggs that egg carton started spontaneously exploding. I think it was because the microwave was right there, and they had those old awful microwaves. But maybe. Anyway, she opens the fridge, sees another plane of existence, as you do, and the devil dog that says Zool, and so she closes the door. Actually, I've done that. I've opened the fridge, seen some really old leftovers that spoke to me, and closed the door again. But that's just my fridge. Anyway, Ray ends up buying the Ghostbuster mobile, the Ecto-1, which is one of the great all-time movie vehicles. Let me just put that right there.
The siren alone is awesome.
Oh, yes.
I love that siren.
It's a broken down old ambulance that needs everything fixed, and he paid $4,800 for it, which is an enormous sum in 1984 dollars. That's just
Doesn't it look more like a hearse? It's got curtains in the side when he first buys it.
Yeah, I think.
But why would a hearse have a siren?
Yeah, no, I think it was an ambulance. I think it was.
I think so.
Yeah,
it looked like a hearse.
Yeah, they had it. You know, they had the ambulance because they want people peeking at the patients, maybe. But one of the things it emphasizes is how they're so completely impractical. They're academics. They've never had real jobs or had to deal with real money, so they just don't, like Ray and Egon, just don't know what they're doing in the real world. So they have their secretary Janine, who again played awesomely by Annie Potts. Like, she's so acerbic, but she loves Egon. She's good. It's so great. Do you have any hobbies? I collect mold, spores, and fungus. I just love that. That exchange.
What do you like to read? Print is dead. Oh, that's nice.
Yes, I think Print is dead. So Egon and Ray. So Dana shows up because she's got this whatever in her fridge, and so she's being interviewed by Egon and Ray. They think her experience, like maybe past lives, race consciousness, clairvoyance, or telepathy. And she says, I don't believe in any of those things. Okay, if you don't believe in any of those things, what are you doing here? You know what I mean? Like, why are you here then?
And where have you been sleeping for 2 days? Because she says he hasn't back to her apartment in 2 days.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, where have you been?
Yeah. She's hanging out with Lewis.
Yeah, I guess so.
And so Venkman immediately, again, because he gets the hots for Dana. And so he goes to the apartment. He acts all macho and tough while trying to impress her. And he's got that funny wand thing, which, as I said before, it's an actual tool that is used to sniff for propane leaks, like gas leaks. And
I think they said they just let him pick. Like, they had a couple things out, and that's the one he picked.
Yeah, which is great. And
it's technical stuff.
Yeah, it's that. And then by the end, like, she's ready to throw him out because he's so obnoxious, and he confesses his love for her. Which,
and before that time, even the way that, like, she's like, "Are you sure you're using that thing correctly?" And, like, you can see this for a split second, he's like, "I think so." He's not even sure if he's been using it the right way.
So he looks in the fridge, and of course it's nothing wrong with it, and so she tosses him out basically. Meanwhile, they get their first real call for a ghost, and was it Janine assures the hotel manager, of course they'll be discreet, and then they show up in the Ectomobile with the siren ringing and everything. So they're at the Cedric Motel, the hotel, which is a hotel in Los Angeles that is in every movie and TV show, by the way.
And you feel so bad for the manager the whole way through.
Yes, just like they're destroying this old hotel. Well,
if you ever worked in any sort of food service, you're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible.
They get in the elevator to go up to the 12th floor because that's where the disturbance is, and they're in there and they get the packs on, and what Peter, I think Ray says, "Why worry? Each of us is wearing an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on his back." And then Ray says, "Switch me on," and it goes, and it like thumps on, and he has this ominous hum, and Egon and Peter shuffle to the other edge of like, if it's a nuke on his back, if it goes off, there's nothing to help you.
But I just, everything Bill Murray says in that movie, like when he's like, we didn't have time to field test this equipment, and he's Egon's like, I blame myself, and he's just like, so do I.
Exactly. Another ad lib, so good. So Ray sees the ghost first, and it's Slimer, and of course he doesn't have a name in this movie. We know he's Slimer from the great 1986 Ghostbusters animated
show.
The animated show, The Real Ghostbusters. It was called.
No, the one.
Yeah, and he was called Slimer. He was their mascot by that, and he was called Slimer. Anyway, Ray sees Slimer, and he runs through a wall first and attacks Peter. And the great line, "He slimed me." I feel so funky. It's so good.
He goes, great, Ray, save some for me.
Yes. And then they catch up to him in the ballroom after causing extensive damage on the 12th floor. And this is what, of course, we get one of the really classic lines. Egon says, something very important I forgot to tell you. Don't cross the streams. It would be bad. Every molecule in your body would explode. And then Peter says, okay, important safety tip, which, of course, I have used that line so often in my life. Someone says, like, something dire could possibly happen, so you got to be careful. And I'll just say, important safety tip, everyone. So give attention. It's so good. So they catch him in the trap. They take him out. There's a great scene of them with the hotel manager get how much the bill is going to be, and he's like, I'm not paying for any of that. And he says, okay, well, we'll just put this back where we found it. And he's like, oh, no, I'll pay. And so they take him out, and then we get the montage. Every 80s movie has a montage, the musical montage. And so we get the musical montage where suddenly they're very busy catching ghosts all over New York. Everyone knows who they are. They're on USA Today, magazine covers. And then we get cameos from Larry King, his first movie appearance, and Casey Kasem with the countdown, the long distance dedication, the Casey Kasem Top 100 countdown. Look it up, folks. For the young folks, go check it out. Look it up in Wikipedia.
Well, and they said that they filmed that a lot of those shots of them on the streets in New York, which the crowds everywhere they went, like people were interested and excited because of
the actors,
their fame, right? From being on SNL and all those kinds of things. And then apparently I just read that they did a lot of those shots of them running around like that and with the ectomobile and everything in, I think, just like a day or two.
Yeah.
And they mostly didn't have filming permits. Right. So they said there's one or two you can actually see. And I think I saw it today. I was doing a rewatch, or at least some of it earlier. And they said there's like somewhere you can actually see like real security guards like kind of chasing them like out of the building.
That's awesome.
So I was like, oh, that's a riot. They've got like the smoking ghost traps and the security guard doesn't know what that is. It's so funny.
Can you imagine doing that in today's climate?
No,
this is nothing. It's just for a movie. Don't worry about it. It's the smoking it'll be
It's
fine.
A smoking device with red lights blinking. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. This is a fake proton pack on my back.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fake nuclear reactor. So this is a point where Winston comes in. Winston's looking for a job. They're knackered. They're all run ragged. They're so busy. So Winston gets hired on the spot with basically no qualifications requested. And finally, Peter gets back to Dana about her case and tells her that the information about Zul. Zul was worshipped 6000 BC by Hittites, Mesopotamians, and Sumerians, and he was a minion of Gozer. So apparently Gozer is in reality is a name related to a documented haunting in England. The name Gozer appeared mysteriously written on walls throughout the house at one point. So I'm guessing that was also Dan Aykroyd's influence, his knowledge of the supernatural and occult. And this is where Walter Peck also shows up, the guy from the EPA, again played brilliantly by William Atherton. And he demands to see the storage facility. There's this great repartee with Peter Venkman, where he's demanding, and Venkman just is pulling his chain the whole time, and basically tells him, no, you get a court order, before I show you. And we get, this is also where we see that Ray demonstrates the trap system, the storage system to Winston. So this is a very, some prefiguring here. So this is going to be important later.
This is one of those things. Bill Murray, you can almost tell when he's delivering lines that are in the script that he has to do.
Yeah.
And he's not really good at acting at those. It's like, oh, this is a scripted line. Because like at the end of the whole back and forth with the EPA guy, it's funny. It's like, no, and well, you didn't say the magic word. Yes. And then when he has to say, well, you come back with a court order and I'll sue your silly ass for wrongful prosecution.
Yeah.
And he delivered it, and I'm like, that was just so forced. He just had to say it. He had to try to be angry, which is not his natural laid back way. The same thing he did later on when he came back to turn it off. He goes, "Don't you turn that off." And it was just kind of like, okay, that was weird because Bill Murray that wasn't a funny improvised line. That was just something he had to say.
Bill Murray is clearly
clearly it wasn't into that line at all.
So this is also the point where Egon gives us the great imagery of the psychic activities ramping up in New York. Yeah. Imagine this Twinkie represents the normal psychic activity. Now imagine a Twinkie 35 feet long, weighing 600 tons. So
that's a big Twinkie.
That's a big Twinkie. So then we have Dana's building. The gargoyles of the dogs on the roof, the scary dogs, end up emerging. The devil dogs, or what do they call them? Terror dogs, I think is what they technically call them. Emerge from the gargoyles amidst the big storm. And then that's when Dana comes home and she sits in the chair and the arms come out of the chair. Another scary scene, by the way.
This is absolutely terrifying. I mean, that's like, think about it, sitting at home alone in your easy chair going, that would be about the most terrifying thing that could possibly happen to me right now. It's like something comes out of the chair and grabs me.
Yes.
And they said that, when Sigourney Weaver was interested, some of them were surprised because she was this big name and they thought of her as,
dramatic
serious
actress
roles and, Ripley from Alien and all this stuff. So that's a real Ripley from Alien kind of scene.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's like, this is not.
I could have, maybe I didn't know him, but like when I looked from Alien to Ghostbusters 5 years, she wasn't in anything that was a hit as far as I know.
Yeah.
So she may have been kind of looking for something.
I think she was looking to do comedy because she had done comedy early in her career and she wanted to show her versatility, which she did. Yeah. She did. So she gets sucked, the chair gets sucked into the kitchen where the devil dog is apparently and absorbs her. We don't see that soft screen. But we're at Lewis's party where, by the way, all of that stuff, Rick Moranis, all the stuff he says to everyone at the party, that's all ad-lib too. He just like, so try the salmon. It's normally $27.95. I got it for $13 because I'm deducting it as an expense because I invited clients instead of friends.
He actually pulls the guy aside and goes, yeah, I'm writing this whole thing up. That's why I invited clients instead of friends. Are you enjoying yourself? It's like, oh my.
So great.
You just told this guy he's not a friend.
The low, the non-brand name aspirin because you can get this much for that much. It's just like, oh
yeah, you get 600.
And then the couple comes in and he has I don't know,
business in receivership.
And she's drawing from a 2-year-old bonus in receivership, and so they're doing okay. Hey, who brought the dog?
Yeah, who brought the dog?
I can't believe. Like, I mean, like with Winston is really the everyman in a lot of sense, and then but Rick Moranis is just that everybody knows that guy.
There's that guy, that socially terrible, awkward guy who thinks he's the center of the party.
And that was all one shot, which is really hard to do.
Oh yeah,
that whole thing.
Yeah, one shot. I love the fact that it's variously described as a dog, a bear, like he runs out and says, who brought a bear to the party? And then there's a bear loose in the building. Later on, someone says it's like the cop says it's a cougar. Someone brought a cougar to a party. So I just love the fact that here's this obvious devil dog and everyone just sees something different at different points. It's just so funny. So it chases him out of the building and he runs into the park. Like he just is running for his life. And he gets to this restaurant, this glass wall. He's on the patio outside. And he's banging on the window, and people just kind of stop, look at him for a second, and then go back to what they're doing because so very New York, so very New Yorkers don't pay attention.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, and he gets attacked, but nobody sees the dog. He's the only one who sees the dog, which is interesting. So Peter shows up at Dana's apartment, and Dana's now possessed, and which is obvious because her hair is all frizzed out. She's wearing dramatic makeup, and she's got a shirt with the shoulder off one side. Yeah, so obviously that means she's possessed. I love the fact that they do that. And she asks Peter if he's the key master. He says no. She slams the door in his face. So he knocks again. Are you the key master? Yes. And so she says she's Zool, the gatekeeper, preparing for the coming of Gozer the Destructor. Meanwhile, Lewis is now Vin Clortho, the keymaster, and he's picked up in Central Park and brought to the Ghostbusters. There's a couple of great moments where he talks to a horse and some other people.
Made that whole speech into between that and the lines he delivers when he goes to when they take him in later.
Yeah,
I had it on a T-shirt at one point. Like the whole. It was just
the whole lines about all the different things. Yeah.
When he's explaining to the Ghostbusters, they have him back in, and he's like, Gozer the Traveler, he will come in one of the pre-chosen forms during the reunification of Vindu. The Traveler came as a large moving trog. Then, during the third reconciliation of Bless, McKendrick, the supplicants, they chose a new form for him, that of a giant slore.
Slore. I love the way he says it.
Zulax knew it to be roasted in the depths of slore that day, I tell you.
That day, I tell you. Oh my gosh, that is such the depths of the slore.
Well, the whole idea of like a demonic entity having trouble working through him.
Yes.
It's just
like of all the forms that it has to take, it takes like this weird little man.
It regrets it.
Yes. Exactly. So Egon and Ray are actually at this point it's Egon and what was it? Janine, who are examining Lewis, and then Ray and Winston come back, and this is when Walter Peck shows up with the police and Con Edison, the electric utility guy, who shut down the grid and release all the ghosts. And I like this whole scene where like the electric guy's like, I'm not touching that. I don't know what that is. and then Ray and Peter and Egon kind of are inching their way out because they know something bad is going to happen. And Peck is telling the cop, you could shoot him if he moves again. Right. Like, you don't tell me who to shoot. You just do your job.
You pencil neck. You do.
Well, I love and just one more thing quick. When they first drop off, I just remember this. I haven't written it down, but when they drop off Lewis, like at the beginning of that scene, and just like Egon coming to the door and just looking at the cop like dropping off or picking up.
Yes, I like that.
Just very like calm, because it could be either, who knows.
Apparently it's happened enough where you have a ritual now, dropping off or picking up. So after everything goes wrong and the ghosts all come out of the system and are roaming through New York, they're arrested by Peck and taken off to jail. So then we have another montage of the ghost running amok while the keymaster is making his way to the gatekeeper. We have the ghost driving the cab. There's a deleted. There was something coming out of the subway. Slimer in the hot dog cart. So there's a whole bunch of fun things there. In the jail, Ray and Egon and Peter are all talking about how Dana's building was designed and built as a huge antenna expressly for the purpose of pulling in and concentrating spiritual turbulence, whatever that is. And a cult in the 1920s built the building to bring about the end of the world. Meanwhile, all of these cons, like all these guys in the jail with them, are kind of edging around, looking over their shoulder. And Peter kind of like stops from like, you getting all that? Like, you guys are getting all that? Is it clear for you? I love that moment.
And then Winston is like, I need a different lawyer.
Yes. Okay. If you guys are going to go in there and say it, tell them this, I just can't be with you guys. Yeah. Then the mayor of New York, who's got these ghosts running amok in his city, demands to have the Ghostbusters brought to him. So the mayor's clearly modeled on Ed Koch, who was the mayor of New York back in the 70s, and he's one of the towering figures of New York politics. I mean, everyone on a national level knew who Ed Koch was. Anyway, he calls the Ghostbusters. I like the fact that the Cardinal Archbishop of New York shows up and calls the mayor Lenny, and Lenny calls him Mike. It's and
they went to school together. Or something.
Yeah. And the Cardinal says officially the church has no official position, but personally I think it's a sign from God. And it's just there's a cardinal there, because as you do, and then he just kind of sits on the side. And they talk about, we're looking at a disaster of biblical proportions, fire and brimstone coming down from the skies, rivers and seas boiling, 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes, the dead rising from the grave. And then this is when Peter jumps in, human sacrifices, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Yeah. It's just this great scene where each of the characters is like on the mayor, but the mayor is convinced finally when Peter tells him, look, if you let us do our thing and we screw up, then it's on us, not you. We go back to jail. But if we succeed, you will have saved the lives of millions of registered voters.
And then they do a shot of the Cardinal nodding his head like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's so funny because I love, and I don't have his name in front of me, but yeah, that the mayor is so funny, and then to have, because of course they have him back in the sequel, which is for a whole other thing. But I always loved it in that one, like his character just saying, like being miserable and treating others like dirt is every New Yorker's God-given right.
That's right. And of course, Peck here is beside himself. Like he thinks, he's convinced that the Ghostbusters are responsible for this. It's some kind of, it's a hoax. It's some kind of thing that they've done. It's some chemical waste or whatever. And well, we don't have to repeat the joke, but there's a famous joke at this point that that gets laid on him that every 12-year-old boy loved to repeat ad nauseum. And frankly, I was one of them back at the time. I've learned. So then we have the people gather around the building where all this stuff is happening. Scenes of people carrying signs that say the end is near. Like, where did they get these signs? Are they keep them in a closet or something? These signs are like the end of the world. Oh, it's time for the end of the world signs, everyone. But we have images of priests blessing the people, like in a row, like 4 priests all standing there, all doing the blessing over and over again.
Synchronized blessings.
Yeah. We have Hasidic Jews praying.
I don't know if it's like a general absolution or something, but they're right there cheering Ghostbusters with the crowd.
Yes,
so.
and the Hasidic Jews are cheering them too. Yes. They show up. They're escorted by the National Guard to the building, in the Ectomobile, and they show up and they're in front of the building, and it's like a parade. They're greeting the crowds and high-fiving people. And then there's an earthquake, and the ground heaves, and they fall in. And you're like, oh no, what's happened? And then they climb out of the hole. It's just this funny, dramatic moment. And then they go in, they climb up 22 floors by the stairs.
Well, Dom, they said in the documentary on Netflix, the Movies That Made Us documentary I mentioned earlier, they were talking about the whole licensing issue over the name, because there was a previous show that had been called Ghostbusters, and they said that they had been filming every scene, like where there was some reference to Ghostbusters. They had filmed it twice with like the other name was going to be Ghost,
Ghost Smashers,
Breakers or Smashers. Yeah. Yeah. And he said that when they filmed that scene outside the apartment, that whole crowd of like hundreds of extras just chanting Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters. And I think the one producer said, he's like, I ran over and I grabbed the payphone, put a quarter in, called whoever the executive was. And I held the phone up. I said, listen to them, and they're cheering. He's like, it's the name's staying. And then they just kind of moved kind of on faith at that point, hoping it would clear up. And and there's a whole cool story how that happened. But I just thought that was fun, too. That was kind of the moment where it's like, no, it's got to be Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
like,
it just sounds better.
What they're yelling. Yeah.
So they climb up the stairs. It's very funny watching these clearly out of shape guys climbing the stairs. How far are we? We're in. I think we're somewhere in the teens. Tell me when we get to 20 so I can throw up.
I'm gonna throw up.
And then they get up there. They've climbed 22 stairs, and as you mentioned, they come out into the hallway. And this is when Egon goes, "Oh, Art Deco, very nice."
And they're like, they're so tired. They're like, "So where's the apartment at the end of the hall?" All right, And they're just like, they're all smokers. Do they all have cigarettes? Out of breath.
I forgot to mention like that scene where they first met Slimer, where Ray, he had just lit a cigarette, and as he sees the ghost, his mouth just falls open, and the cigarette just kind of falls and hangs from his lip, like unnoticed. And that was completely spontaneous. They wasn't prepared. It just kind of just hung there, but off of his lip. It was very funny. So anyway, they Dana and Lewis, or the gatekeeper and the keymaster, are together in Dana's apartment that's now been blasted open. She's not living there anymore. And they've climbed up to the roof where there's this altar, and they open the astral door to the astral plane, whatever that is. I'm not sure what it is, but just go with it. And then they turn into the terror dogs. And this is where Peter says, "Yeah, my girlfriend, she's a dog." Just kind of acknowledging. And then they have to confront Gozer. So we have this who has taken the form of I think he was a Czechoslovakian model, but who they actually ended up having to dub in all her lines because her accent was so strong that no one could understand anything she was saying.
Did you catch the one that when she's saying choose and perish?
Choose and
Bill
perish.
Murray, another controversial thing. He said it sounded like she was saying Jews and berries, and he couldn't stop laughing because just every time she tried to say it and he's like, that's not. So they're like, we're gonna have to dub it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to dub that in.
It's like, that's not gonna work.
So they this time they push Ray up to confront her, and so he gives her like the cease and desist order to return to your previous plane of existence. And she says, "Are you a god?" And he says, "No." And so she blasts them all with lightning. And this is where Winston, who's the most faith-filled guy of them all, says, "If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes." Which is just so funny. And then she says, "The traveler has come. choose the form of the destructor and perish. And they're all like, empty your minds. Don't think of anything. Blank slate. And that Ray gets that look on his face, like, oh, I can't stop thinking. And he thinks of the most innocent figure of my childhood, the most that could not possibly hurt me. And it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, a giant building-sized Marshmallow Man, who is stomping through New York on the way here. I love the fact that you hear the footsteps, these heavy, like, pounding footsteps far away as they're talking, like, what did you do, Ray? What did you do? And it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow
then
Man.
You see a little bit of him between the buildings. You're not sure what it is.
Yeah.
And then he looks like a float on the Macy's Day Parade. He's so happy and fluffy.
Yeah,
what could he possibly do?
Yes.
Well, and it's a little bit like the whole, the possession of Lewis, and as ridiculous as that is on this mega scale,
right?
And Dan Aykroyd was saying, I'd heard before, like Michelin Man and Pillsbury Doughboy, but Dan Aykroyd added that it actually also, his original concept was those two, and the the Angelus marshmallow, which was a product in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Which would look similar, and then he said that I guess the storyboarding, like the concept art guys did like the sailor costume thing, and he said he almost fell out of his chair laughing. Like the moment he saw it, he's like, yes, that's it.
The sailor costume is just the on top of it, and of course Venkman makes a joke there too, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
So the Marshmallow Man attacks the building and catches on. They shoot him first. He catches on fire, and the only choice here is to do the one thing that is very bad that we should not do, which is to cross the streams. And so they do the whole thing.
What does Egon say? He's like, there's definitely a slim chance we'll survive.
Yes, right.
Oh, let's do it.
I'm in. So they shoot the portal with the things, and everything explodes. The Marshmallow Man explodes. Marshmallow falls everywhere, including all over Peck. There's like this scene where he's standing on the street, and this huge thing of marshmallow falls on him. Now, there's a story where William Atherton says he, as they were about to film this, he saw like the big bag that he was supposed to stand under, and he's like, how much marshmallow? And it wasn't marshmallow, it was
shaving cream.
Shaving cream. It's like, how much is in there? And they said it's 75 pounds, but it's only shaving cream. And he's like, do you ever hear the old joke about 75 pounds of rocks and 75 pounds of feathers? Which would you rather get hit by? It's still 75 pounds. So what they did was they like, okay, we'll send a stuntman to show you. So the stuntman walks over, they pull the thing, it drops 75 pounds of shaving cream on him. The guy gets flattened like to the floor. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll put half as much in. So what they really dropped on him was half as much. And apparently the line he yells there, which you can't really hear over everything, is Venkman, I hate you, as it hits him. So that's a great moment.
Now the irony is, up on the building, everyone, all three other Ghostbusters besides Venkman appear, and you can't even tell who they are because they're completely covered in marshmallow. And then Venkman comes out and he has like a little bit on his shoulder, a little bit in his hair, and I'm like, did like Bill Murray have a fear of shaving cream? I mean, what was the deal? Like, why
did he put his foot down?
It's like, no, you're not doing this to me.
And he says, I feel like the floor of a taxi cab, which is such a great...
says that. I feel like the floor of a taxi cab.
That's such a great line because it's so evocative. Like, you gross.
And then when they go over to get
Lewis and Dana,
he's like, oh, it smells like burnt dog hair. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I forgot.
Because he thought she was dead at that point. Yeah. But then it turns out they're inside the statues of the dogs. They have to pull them out. And as they're walking out, I think Egon or Ray say to Lewis, Mr. Tully, you've been a participant in the biggest interdimensional cross rip since the Tunguska incident of 1909, which is just great. And then we'd like to take a sample of your brainstem. And he just says, okay.
Okay.
And that's about where we end things there. So, and that's becomes one of the great movies of all time. It's on bunches of lists of top 100 movies and great comedies and quotable movies and all that sort of stuff. So, and they made a Ghostbusters 2. They made the Ghostbusters reboot kind of thing a few years ago.
With the ladies?
The ladies, yeah.
I wasn't the biggest fan. I just didn't.
I never got bothered. I thought it was.
It felt more like a parody, quite frankly. But I'm excited for the next one because it's
well, that's what I was going to bring
Jason
up.
Reitman.
Yeah, it's kind of a third sequel. It's got Ivan Reitman's son doing it, and it's there's a trailer. The only thing about it, though, is it's called Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it's got is that Paul Rudd in it? I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
what's the kid from Stranger Things? I'm forgetting his name now.
Oh, a few kids from
it's something different. It's like Wolf something.
Yeah.
What's it? Come on, Google.
Bill Murray. Finn Wolfhard.
Or Finn Wolfhard. That's right. Yeah.
Is that the big kid?
No,
it's Mike.
Yeah, it's Mike. Yeah. So, but also going to be in it, which we haven't seen in the trailers, is Annie Potts, Bill Murray, Sigourney Weaver, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
They're all credited.
Way, is it just me, or does Ernie Hudson pretty much not look older than he did in like 1989?
Right. Ernie Hudson.
He's 75 years old.
He has not aged a day.
Which is unbelievable.
No, it's crazy how old they are. I was looking at the different people, and like the college student that Peter was hitting on in the beginning of the movie. Yesterday, she turned 60.
Wow!
I was just like, wow, this is like so. People are so old now, and and I also just before we wrap up, it's funny with these guys. And you look at like Caddyshack and Stripes and the different things they did together. With some of them, in pairs and whatever. And it seemed like they were just partying. Like they were just like, they were probably getting high and drunk and, and filming this movie on the side. But the fact is that they were just so darn talented. I mean, you have two of the Ghostbusters wrote the script. Yep. Another guy directed it, but one of them probably could have. And they just kind of winged it and filmed way too much and came up with gold because they're so darn funny. It was just like, you can't. Without those three guys, that movie goes nowhere. You have nothing.
I mean, it was kind of the 80s were kind of a golden age for these sort of crazy funny movies. You had so many funny actors. So you had these guys, but then you had Eddie Murphy making movies. You had John Candy making movies. You had
Saturday Night Live spewing out icons of people. Like,
yes. It's when Saturday Night Live was funny.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live was funny, and the people that were coming off that were just superstars. For like 15 years. And in the 80s, it was the golden age of those guys coming out and doing movies that are just still classics. Yeah.
One last thing about this sequel, or what? It's really a sequel. I mean, you've got the same actors in it. Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it was originally supposed to come out this summer, but with everything, I think it's been pushed back to next year. The trailer seems kind of dark, not all that funny, and I don't know if they've done that intentionally to kind of tamp down expectations of funny or what, but I'm kind of curious. I hope it's a comedy. I really do. I hope they go slapstick for broke, because it's got to be for Ghostbusters. Don't do a serious scary movie. Do a comedy.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't see how they couldn't.
You're right. Anything left to say about this movie, though, the Ghostbusters 1984?
I just, it's funny. My dad reminded me that, again, just it's been with me my whole life. He still has like on this desk, this old desk of his, there's like a little piece of masking tape that's still on there that I had like put and wrote Venkman on it, because like we had the costumes and stuff. Yep. And we even named, I forgot about this till just now, but in I think 88, we got a dog. Uh-huh. And I named him Winston.
Oh, wow.
Because the story goes, I wanted desperately to name the dog Egon. And my dad said, I'm not going to stand outside at night yelling Egon for a dog to come in. So
where's the dog? Like, Egon.
It's like, no. So, but yeah, so even goes to the naming of our first dog. So
that's awesome. That's great.
I never get sick of it. It's always fun.
Great. Right. Well, so I guess we'll wrap it up. I do want to stop here and take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV shows, including Rick A., Christina T., Dennis G., Jeffrey F., and Catherine N. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of the original Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters movie? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. or send an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Until next time, Mike Denz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Ghostbusters.
I'll just end by saying I'm terrified beyond the capacity for rational thought.
And Mike Creavey, thank you as well.
Hey, thanks so much.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on StarQuest. And remember, many Shuvs and Xools knew what it was like to be roasted in the depths of the floor that day, I can tell you.